Welcome to the episode of Jay Leno's Garage. You know, when I read the comment sections, people seem to like the fact that we try to highlight some of the more unusual vehicles that are out there, and it doesn't get much more unusual than this. This is a 1966 Munch Mammoth. This is a motorcycle developed by a man named Friedel Munch. He was a German machinist, tuner extraordinaire. He raced motorcycles as a young man, but I think he had some kind of heart condition. He was an aircraft mechanic for the Luftwaffe during World War II, and he was one of Germany's best motorcycle tuners, who then decided to build his own motorcycle. And what he decided to use was the four-cylinder NSU Prinz automotive engine. This was put in a car, 1,000 cc's. Later Munch Mammoths were 1,200 cc's, some went as high as 2,000 cc's. He only built, I guess, around 500 bikes altogether in maybe a period of what, maybe 25 or 30 years. But this is the second one built. There was a prototype, and this was bike number 2. Notice the hand-hammered tank. This is the first one to have an electric start. Originally they had Weber carburetors. This one has the Bings on it. The cool thing about it is, back in the 60s, bikes weren't that reliable, so this used a lot of automotive components. A big alternator, dual headlights, and this was one of the fastest bikes, certainly the 60s. A lot of people call it the first super bike. I think the top speed was 130, 140 miles an hour. It was not meant to be a racing bike, but the ultimate luxury road machine. And Friedel Munch was not a particularly good businessman, brilliant engineer. He developed a series of front brakes for motorcycles that all the racers used back in the 50s and 60s, and he sort of did the same thing here. This bike was so powerful they couldn't put a wire wheel on the back, so he made his own wheel using a magnesium aluminum alloy of some kind. He built his own wheel. Notice the enclosed chain case, so you have constant lubrication there. It was a well thought out machine and quite fast, and every time you get on this thing, you just feel like you want to invade Poland, you know? Just dun 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 dun. I mean, it's so dramatic, I guess, is the best way to say it. I don't mean that in an insulting way. I mean it in the best way. You know how some vehicles look American and some vehicles look Italian? Well, this looks German. It's strong, it's purposeful, it's extremely well made. But back in the 60s, this was thought to be a giant motorcycle and expensive. In 1966, this bike was $4,000. Now a Triumph Bonneville was what, $1,200, $1,300? A Harley Davidson maybe $1,600, $1,800. So that gives you some idea of how exclusive this was. And as I said, Friedel was not a very good businessman, went broke a bunch of times. And then finally a man named Floyd Clymer. He was a motorcycle racer and publisher. He did Cycle Magazine, a bit of a P.T. Barnum sort of character, but a true motorcycle enthusiast. And he bought into the company and decided to import them to the United States. Here's the very first ad for the Munch Mammoth. Let me show you. Take a look at this. But then eventually, I think Floyd Clymer died around 1970, and then the bikes just, again, never quite caught on. But as you can see, good-looking motorcycle. Some aspects of it very agricultural. Look at this. That's your front prop stand right there. Then you have your center stand. Had turn signals before that was fashionable on motorcycles. These are German. These were quite common on BMWs of the period. You have a 160-mile-an-hour speedometer. No hydraulic brakes, just regular cable brakes. No hydraulic clutches or anything of that. But this NSU car engine, you know, being air-cooled, it really was perfect for this motorcycle. I think it's somewhat of a Norton featherbed type frame, if I'm not mistaken. It's sort of somewhat of a copy on that, but extremely well put together. I've had this bike for a long, long time, and I got it from the Ultimate Munch guy. Now, he passed away a number of years ago. This book is called Beyond My Wildest Dreams by Dave Manthe. I think that's how Dave says his name. Let me show you a picture of me. Here you go. Here's me taking delivery of my bike. He delivered this bike to me. There you go, right there. See that? Notice the black hair. There he is. He and I in the back again. He was in Iowa. And he was probably the most prolific Munch collector, certainly in the United States. He knew about these bikes before anybody did. And that's where I got it. I got it from him. And I was sort of shocked to learn that this was only the second bike ever made. It was imported into the United States. And then I ran into a guy once who told me, oh, I know that bike. I used to work on that bike, you know. And he kind of went on, and I thought, well, who's this guy? Kind of an odd character. And then for some reason, we had the engine out, and I noticed inside the cases, his name was etched there with the date. And I went, oh, that guy really did work on the bike. So I called him, and he gave me some inside tips. Anyway, the bike's got two batteries, one on each side, two 12-volt batteries, one on each side, because don't forget, it is automotive. That makes it a little bit interesting. It's not that heavy a bike. It's, well, maybe around 500 and something pounds, which is quite a bit for motorcycles back in the day. Triumphs and BSAs were quite light. Notice the tail section here. Friedel Munch was an excellent machinist and mechanic. Well, if you want to get this book, it might be available on eBay or something. There it is right there. It's kind of his story. Okay, these are a little cold-blooded. First thing you want to do is open the fuel. And then, as carburetors were wont to do back in the 60s, you tickle a carburetor, get a little fuel into the cylinders. You got 4 ticklers here. And you have 2 keys to start this thing. It's kind of like the nuclear codes, you know, you got to put them both in. This starts it, this key runs the headlights. And then, of course, you have your turn signals here. Show you those, where they go there. There you go. Turn signals on the other, which I think is kind of cool. Well, let's see if she starts. As you can see, it's pretty smooth and a lot of torque. It's really only rated about 55, maybe 60 horsepower, but it feels a lot more than that. There you go, now she's idling. But not a lot of vibration. I'm going to bring it next door. I'll check the air pressure, put my helmet, my jacket on, and we'll go for a ride. Jawohl! The best thing about this bike is when you go to any kind of motorcycle gathering, you're probably going to be the only one there with one of these. You're not going to see yourself coming and going. These are so rare, most people don't even know about them. Silver has sort of come to be the German color of choice. You know, the German racing colors used to be white. And the rumor is that during the Grand Prix wars of the 30s, a couple of the German cars are too heavy. So Alfred Neubaumer's, I think his name, something like that, told them to strip the paint off them to try and get as much weight out of them as they could. And what was left below was the silver color, and that became sort of the national racing color. I have no idea if that's true, but that's sort of the rumor I heard. And it makes a good story anyway. Notice you get no vibration in the mirror at all. These had a voracious appetite for rear tires. Tires were gone after about 4,000 miles on these things. But all the German motorcycle magazines in the mid-60s have great stories about guys cruising the Autobahn on these things going 110, 125 miles an hour for, you know, hours on end. That doesn't seem like that much now, but back in the day, that was really high speed for motorcycles. For the most part, motorcycle technology has probably moved a lot quicker than automotive technology. Back in the 60s, motorcycles vibrated, leaked oil, and you know, you had to pull the head off after 7,500 miles and all kinds of stuff like that. Hard for me to believe I've had this bike over 30 years, and it's been
all you need in this thing. It's got so much torque. You know, you put it in a fourth gear at 50 or 60, and you feel like you're lugging it, so you just got up and down a gear. It's very long-legged. I mean, it's hard to convey how wild this bike was back in the 60s. There really weren't very many four-cylinder motorcycles. There was some, you know, Italian racing bikes and things of that nature. And of course, you did have the Hendersons and the Indians, but they didn't make this kind of power. And they weren't overhead valve modern design like this is. And their gravity is a little high. You can feel it going into the corners, but it just pulls so nicely. To bring back this motorcycle, you know, they made some versions as big as 2,000 cc's, but they never quite got off the ground. I still think Friedel's original vision was the best way to go. You know, this 1,000 cc bike is just about the right size. It's a great cruising bike. Now watch, I put it in 6th gear. Not about 50, I'm not even turning 2,000 RPM. It's quite a comfortable bike. You know, you can maintain a high cruising speed, 75, 80 all day in this thing. Because the way the bars are, the way you sit, the wind kind of keeps you up. It doesn't put any strain on your shoulder. You know, I've seen the later ones that are fuel injected and are taken out to 1,800 cc's and all this kind of stuff, and it seems like it's too much. It seems like, I don't know, I can't put my finger on it. This is probably the smallest and the lightest version of the Munch Mammoth ever built, and even this is pretty good size. And it just feels about right. Doesn't help if you're a little on the tall side, you have long legs. Shorter riders might find it intimidating. The thing I liked about this bike, as I said, it uses automotive components rather than motorcycle components. That's why nothing has ever gone wrong. You know, the Germans are very good with electrics and that type of thing, and this thing is perfect. You know, the headlights are the greatest motorcycle headlights I'd ever seen, certainly in the mid-60s. It's a little scary to drive because you're driving essentially a prototype. There was the prototype, and this was the second one built. And I was always worried that you're going 80, 90, something's gonna, you know, something's out of whack, something's out of line. But I've never had any problem with it. 30 years I've had this thing, it's been fantastic. But I probably do need to get that wheel back this for safety. Still a great sounding bike.
You know, I said before, I always like vehicles that are one man's vision of what something should be, whether it's Enzo Ferrari, a W.O. Bentley, or you know, the Duesenberg brothers. And this was Friedel Munch's idea of what a motorcycle should be. You know, like a lot of these guys, great engineer, terrible businessman. I mean, look at this hand-hammered tank. How long would it take to make this? A week? Well, how many of these could you turn out in a year? So, you know, he wasn't a business guy. He was an engineer, and like so many of these guys, didn't really make a lot of money on it, but left an amazing legacy. I got to pull that rear wheel and get that Magnaflex before I really start to hammer this bike hard. Yeah, I got to be careful. But it's so intoxicating to ride, and it's so exciting, and it makes all the right noises, and that's what motorcycling should be about. It should be a little bit scary, I think, you know, just to, you know, as soon as you get off, you go, ah, I made it back. I'm still alive. How about that? See you guys next week.
you.